Good afternoon, students and others that have joined us today. We are so grateful that you are here. My name is Dr. Margaret Bindio. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Academic Advisement and Student Development. And also I serve as the coordinator of advisement in the College of Arts and Humanities and College of Business. I'm one of the organizers of this event. Today is a special day. It's the first of a speaker series on academic resilience this semester. As an institution and community, and as individuals, we are faced with unprecedented challenges and disruptions because of COVID-19. The pandemic, as we all know, has changed the way we do things. It has changed our lifestyles, and it has also posed additional stress to everyone, and especially to our students. In launching this free speaker series, we are doing our small part to equip you with the best tools and strategies to help you persevere through challenges during these difficult times. We kindly ask that you consider being part of all the 6 remaining series sessions, which will be occurring every other Wednesday throughout the semester. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen to post questions. Dr. Primus will answer them after the presentation. I now hand over to Dr. Godino to introduce the speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to have you with us. And thank you to Dr. Mabindio for her wonderful organizing of this event, and to Mr. Lyman for helping us so much with the technology. We are so excited to have today Dr. Nakeiha Primus Smith, who is an associate professor in education foundations here at Millersville University. She completed her undergraduate degree at Tufts University and then obtained her Master of Arts in Teaching from Duke University, followed by her PhD from the University of Delaware. Prior to her current role at Millersville, she spent many years as a secondary English teacher in both private and public schools. And Dr. Primus Smith brings to us a wealth of experience, including being coordinator of the multiple disciplinary studies program, which has done so many good things at Millersville. So Dr. Primus Smith, welcome, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Dr. Minyo and Dr. Godino, for those wonderful introductions. And thank you for inviting me to participate in this academic resilience series as its first speaker. How y'all doing out there? I can't see you, but I just want to make sure that you are clear that this information is for you. These series, these sessions, these workshops, these insightful talks are for your benefit. We are in unprecedented times in terms of being ready for school and doing well and being resilient. And I was honored that my faculty peers thought I could offer some useful insight and information for you. So I just want to say, hey, how you doing? I hope after these first 2 weeks of school, you are feeling hopefully a little more rested, a little less stressed, and things are starting to, have somewhat of a routine. And if not, that's okay. This talk today is going to be somewhat informal, somewhat formal way for me to get you on track, hopefully give you some resources to help you feel more empowered about this experience you've embarked on. Just so I can kind of get a sense of where you are and who you are, could you go ahead and put in the chat your year and your major? So put like, hey, Dr. P, my name is Mike. I am a psych major. This is my first year. Because I can see the chat, so I can see kind of who I'm talking to and where we are. And plus I want to give some feedback and have some engagement in there. So if you can go ahead and put that in the chat for me. I know there are about 35 of you here. So please take a moment in the chat and make sure you're letting me know what's your first name, what's your major, if you have one, and if you don't, that's okay. And what year are you? and then we're going to get started. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Aaliyah, Morgan, Clarabelle, Savannah. Awesome. Hey, Madeline, how you doing? Hey, Jabriah. Hey, Cece. Hey, Eddie, Abby. Y'all going too fast. Hey, India. Hey, Kylie. Hey, Benicia. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hey, Kelly. And being undecided is fine. Secondary English, well, welcome. Your name is Nakeiha too, that's awesome. Thank you, Kayla. Hey, Michaela. Brennan, Ebenezer, Anai. Hey, Laura, we got some grad students here. Awesome, awesome, awesome. If I didn't say your name, please don't worry. I'm saying good afternoon and good morning to all of you. I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna share my screen because I wanna leave enough time to answer any questions you may have. And also, as I said, make sure that you're getting the most out of this workshop, this seminar as possible. Hey, Colin, and keep putting that stuff in the chat for me. I can see it. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. I made a little PowerPoint just so that it can help keep me accountable, keep us on track. And if at any point during this seminar, feel free to put your questions in the chat so that we can curate them and answer them collectively at the end. All right, here we go. All right. So, setting goals based on your values, setting a resilience action plan. Interestingly enough, when this topic came to me, I was in a professional and personal space that was like, oh my goodness, this is like exactly where I am with myself and with my students. And so I don't know if my colleagues knew that. I don't know, maybe they're psychic somehow, but the universe made it so clear that this was something that I could speak to because I have been living through this, as we all have been, figuring out how to ensure I am doing my very best and making sure when I hit an obstacle, when I face a challenge, I can do so holistically. I'm all about making sure that my students and that the people I facilitate growth with are whole people. So that's kind of where I'm gonna come at this with, all right? So let's jump in. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself. If you recognize this picture and its location, I want you to put a Y, capital Y, in the chat. That means yes. If you do not recognize this scene, put a no, a capital N in the chat, okay? I can still see the chat. Yes, yes, yes. Most of you know this place. So I'm gonna tell you a little story and it'll come full circle. So in high school, this is a place where I grew up. Well, not this particular spot, but this city is the city that I grew up in. And I went to all-girls Catholic high school courtesy of a sponsorship program. Up until that point, I was a public school kid. I went to the public schools in my city. I did fairly well, but like most urban centers in America, my zoned high school was not necessarily going to be as equipped to help me. Hold on, there's a lot of noise in a minute. Was not equipped to help me move past what I wanted to do for my life. It didn't match my goals, right? And my zoned high school was completely underfunded. It had a lot of issues. And so when I was in 8th grade, my mom and I started looking for other things. And so we found this sponsorship program that allows students who are from an urban background to go to a Catholic school and, you know, get some scholarship money to do so. Long story short, I was able to get a mentor through this program. And in this program, we met up multiple times. And one of the places we met was in this place that you see on the screen. And we went to many plays and had dinner or lunch or even went to the movies. And as you can see from this this picture, this location is very well known for a whole host of things, but one of the things is very well known for, it's the billboards. So as you can see in the picture, you can advertise to your heart's desire if you want to sell anybody anything. And I remember one evening, my sponsor and I, my mentor and I, were walking through this location, and I had just received a gift from my mom. She had bought me a windbreaker jacket. It was so like fly, as we used to say back in the 90s, and it had a particular name brand on it. Interestingly enough, that name brand was also on one of the billboards as we were walking through this location. And I had to be about 14 or 15 years old. And my mentor, my sponsor at the time, she quizzically looked at me, and we stopped walking mid-stride. And she said to me, Nakeiha, why does your coat say the same thing that's on the billboard? And I'm looking at her like, what do you mean? Like, what? Like, huh? And it was at that point that I realized how people's values are often connected to their expectations, not only of themselves, but of other people. And in no fault of her own, my sponsor gave me one of the biggest lessons I had ever learned up until that point. She, not knowing that my mom has, some means, and that I also had a job, and that we like certain nice things, would purchase them. She expected that because she was my sponsor, that I shouldn't have access to those things, or that perhaps maybe it was not fair. I don't know. I never really asked her, but I came away with this lesson. What we value often comes in direct correlation to our expectations. And that is where I start with you. When you came to college, you came with several expectations. And so before I even talk about how to set goals and how to build a resilience plan and what that means, I really, 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 really want you to start thinking, if you haven't already, what expectations do I have of my time here at Millersville? And what value have I ascribed to myself based on those expectations that come with them? Right? Because you can't create goals. You cannot have a resilience plan if you don't know why you're in it, quote unquote, to begin with. And so I want to walk you through a process of first going in. I'm a reflective practitioner. I'm a teacher by trade. This is the kind of thing that I live for because it often helps us uncover the motivations behind what we're doing, help us be honest with whether or not we're really capable of doing those things. It also gives us permission to ask for help and seek out resources. And it also helps us reimagine sometimes what the end goal could be. And so for this time that I have you here, I share my personal story, at least a little snippet of my personal story, because this is one of the lessons that I learned from that conversation. What we expect and what others expect of us often determine how and when and where we set our goals. And those same expectations can often hinder or help how we bounce back or build our resilience. And so if we don't deal with the things that are within us and why we're doing them, why we're at school, for example, and what we hope to get out of it, we will often keep repeating cycles of unmet expectations and failed goals. And for you, especially during this time where we're in the middle of a pandemic and Black Lives Matter and everything else is building and our society's kind of like, ah! Right? All that's happening right now. I want to make sure your heart's clear and that your intentions are confident. And the only way to set good goals is to start there. If you're with me, I want to see you write in the chat, or you can be clapping or whatever you want. Just give me a clap in the chat. You can write the word clap, or you can put an emoji. Let me see if you're with me. Excellent, Jabria. Thank you, Laura. Clap, 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 clap. Use those emojis, right? So you might not have intended to start this seminar, this series with talking about yourself or feeling certain things, but that's where we got to start, right? You can't build academic resilience if you're not clear about who you are and what you value. So as I mentioned, what about you, right? And not that you need to do this right now, but if you have a sheet of paper, if you have another tab up or whatever you have to like take some notes on, start asking yourself this question. Why did I come to Millersville in the first place? And who made it a priority for me? Now, there could be multiple answers to this question. Many of us have engaged in higher education for multiple reasons. That's perfectly okay. But at the core of it, when you ask that question to yourself, why am I here? To get a good job, to get good grades, to learn a few new skills, to meet some people. Hell, some of us came to college because we want to meet our boo. That's okay. That's quite all right. But be honest about yourself and your motivations. And then when you think about that, well, what expectations come with that? So for example, I went to college because I knew that I wanted to elevate my level of knowledge. I was a nerd in the worst way possible. I watched Star Trek. I did all the things that nerds do. I went to the library for fun. It might not look like it because I have a little bit of swag left, but still, I went to college because I love to learn. I also went to college because I knew growing up, and for those of you who didn't recognize this space, that's Times Square in New York City. I grew up in New York City, and education in my family was completely non-optional. I was one of the first people in my family to go to college because my parents didn't have an opportunity to. And so getting an education for me meant a certain level of elevation, a certain level of access. And I did not want to squander that. And so as I set goals about what was important to me, I also had to build into place some safeguards, some guardrails to protect the things that I valued, okay? What is a value? This is my definition, not Webster, not Google. I had to sit with this because, you know, sometimes we have to personalize what values and all these words that people use and throw around. For me, this. That's why there's no attribution. It's mine. Feel free to take it. Feel free to take a screenshot. This is what I think a value is. It's the combination, and this is my English nerd coming out, so please forgive me, okay? Our values are a combination of the things that are and the things we do, just simply put. But for those of you who need a little bit more, they are beliefs we hold dear that are tied to how we, quote unquote, value ourselves or give worth to ourselves and the type of person, life, livelihood, relationships we desire. They are also the basis of our expectations of ourselves and often of others. One moment, please. Sorry about that. Y'all with me? Okay. And so when I think about how do I set goals based on my values, I have to think about what's important to me. What matters to me? What kind of life do I want to live? What kind of relationships do I want to have, right? So if you're new to the chat, because I'm seeing some new people jumping in, just give me a hand, a high five or a thumbs up or something. Let me know you're here. And we'll keep moving. All right. So what are my values? What do I hold dear? Right? And why do I desire them? They're also the things that give me my expectations, not only of myself, but of other people. Okay? A goal, right? It is an aspirational, a vision I want to achieve, and a practical aim that moves us closer to a particular outcome, right? So if I say one of my goals is to learn Spanish, right? It's both aspirational and has practical implications. There's something I have to do in order to reach that. particular outcome. And I'm starting with these definitions because I want to be clear about what this process is like. You start with yourself, you define what your expectations are, you define what your goals are, and we keep moving. If you're with me, I wish we could do like some say amens or whatever, but we can't. No worries, we'll keep moving. So how did I do this for myself? And I encourage you to do this for yourself as well, right? So we started with that question, why are you here? Why are you at a university in Millersville, Pennsylvania during COVID, taking classes or online or in a hybrid way, or some of you even face-to-face? Why? And we have multiple reasons for that. So if I were to draw, I could draw a circle about me in the middle and some offshoots, right? Some offshoots about why I'm here. And with those offshoots come expectations that are tied to my values, right? So what are the things that I value? For me as a student, I had to think back to myself as a student. Well, I value integrity, right? Integrity is being the same with every group of people, each person I meet, as I am in my private life. Like, you're not, the way y'all see me right now is how I'm with everybody to certain degrees, right? Not everybody should get all access to you, but I'm not going to pretend to be something that I'm not. I'm not going to, say something behind somebody else's back that I wouldn't say to their face. That's just me, right? I value honesty. I value helping other people. Part of the reason I'm an educator is because I have always valued seeing other people do well. And that's part of the reason why I'm here, right? I value my faith, my family. There's a lot of things that I value, right? And so for you, when you're thinking about, why am I at Millersville? What do I want to get out of being at this particular university at this time? Start thinking about those things in conjunction with the things that you value. And you can value things like, I want to make sure I have a good network of people that I know. Perfectly good, perfectly fine. I value money and I want to make sure I elevate my family out of a particular socioeconomic background. Perfectly good, perfectly fine. I want to learn how to be a meteorologist, so I need some skills so I can, and Millersville is known for that, so that's what I'm going to do. Perfectly good, perfectly fine. What do you value? I value the sciences. I value dance. I value art. I value diversity. Whatever it is you value, you need to be clear on what they are and what expectations you have of yourself of them, right? And so how do you move from values to goals? Take a look at the screen. And these are just kind of made up just based on my own personal values and thinking back to myself as a college student. So if I value integrity, like presenting my best self in all situations, a goal I could have while in college, while in the midst of this, is saying, I will be prepared and ready to learn for my classes 95% of the time. I don't expect myself to be perfect. I know that there are days when I'm like, I don't want to do this. And so I give myself some grace. I hope as you create your goals, you're giving yourself room to be a human, room to not want to do something sometimes. I hope as you create your goals, especially your academic goals, right, that they don't all say, I'm going to get all A's in all my classes. Well, that's great. Is that practical? Is my question. Would that reflect the best use of your time? Or would saying, I'm gonna try my best and get as many A's as possible given the circumstances? Because you might not have the capacity to get an A in math. Like for me, I knew going in college calculus, that was not gonna be an A. I'd be glad with a C. And it's not that I wasn't gonna try. It wasn't that I wasn't smart enough. I just knew where the limits of my knowledge were. And I didn't really like math. So I had to be honest with myself, right? My work will be my own, and when I need help, I will ask for it, even if it makes me nervous. That goes with my value of being honest, right? I told y'all, I wasn't the math student. I majored in English in college, and I had to take 2 math classes, barely passing both of them. But I think I learned the most in those classes because I was humble enough to say, you know what, I need to go to the tutoring center. I need to ask a friend to kind of look at their notes, to check my notes, to make sure that what I'm hearing is the same thing that they're hearing, and I need to go to office hours, right? Setting goals, remember, going back a little bit, that are both aspirational and practical, right? We don't want to have these lofty goals like, I'm going to have a 4.0 GPA and take the hardest classes that Millersville offers. That's possible, but is it practical, given who you are? I don't know that. Only you can decide that. And part of the process in college is being very honest about who you are and your capacity. So setting goals that are smart, as they say, that are specific, that are measurable, that are attainable, that are realistic, and that are timely, right? And then finally, I will share my goals with my support system so they can keep me accountable. One of the things that you have that you may not be using at your best disposal right now is the cohort of people that you are around. And I know that we're in COVID, and I know that things are supposed to be socially distanced, but you are all the generation of the text, the generation of the snap, the generation of the IG. Use the resources you have to pull people into your experience, especially when things get a little more difficult. All right, just to sum up, how do I create a goal, Dr. P, based on my values? I can't tell you what your goals should be, but what I can tell you is it should align with the things that in many ways reflect the type of person you are. And I know many of you are still figuring that out. That is okay. A goal is a dynamic thing, if we go back, right? It can change. It can grow. You can add some color to that joint, and you can just make it your own. But you cannot do this by yourself. If you're with me, put a clap, put a something in the chat. Let me know that you're understanding what I'm saying. All right, a high five, something. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Chris. Smiley face. Yes, yes. Thank you, Tegan. I appreciate it. I need the feedback. All right. Moving forward, keep putting that stuff in the chat. If you have a question, if I'm not making sense, let me know in the chat. They're pulling out all the questions, so don't worry about all the stuff that's there. All right. Your goals must align with your values, and your values are the thing that help create a compass for your life. And you're in a unique space here at Millersville. You're getting a chance to figure it out. So don't feel stuck if you're like, I don't understand. That's okay. You will. College is a natural disruptor to the process of identity development. This is where my house is. This is where my research is, right? So you all are in a space where you're like, okay, I have to learn some stuff. I have to do well, and I have to figure out who I am. Those are tall orders. Newsflash, you're not going to figure it out in 4 years, so don't try. But you can begin to refine the process of skill development that allows you to say, you know what? I am this type of person. I am this type of friend. I am this type of student. I learn best when these types of things are present for me. And so what's in my control to help facilitate me in the best way possible so that I can have some academic success? All right. Quick note, and this is a little bit more engagement. How has the first few weeks of the fall semester influenced or impacted your academic goals or values? Be honest. You can't send me a private message, I don't think. If you can, send me a private message and let me know your thought. This is just for me. This is not for the other panelists. How has the first few weeks of the fall semester influenced or impacted your academic goals or values? For example, what have you said to yourself? Like, we're 2 weeks, almost 2.5 weeks in to the fall semester. What has your internal response been to this process? I'm gonna be real with y'all. I was completely overwhelmed for the first 10 days of the semester. And this is my 7th year at Millersville. Part of the reason is I didn't realize that being on Zoom so long would create the headaches that I have. Wow. So I had to shift my goals just a little bit. I have to make space for debriefing time, no screen time whatsoever, right? So I don't have academic goals per se, but I do have professional goals. One of my professional goals is to make sure I have a touch point with my students at least twice a week. That's a lot. And so in order for me to reach my goal, I have to build in some time not to have on the screen. Because if I'm on the screen all the time, it creates these headaches. I also had to think about, okay, how can I get those touch points and not use Zoom? So I started having phone conversations with my students, text conversations with my students. It's going to be a long 4 years. Well, let's hope not, Anderson. Thanks, Michaela. And yeah, realizing that taking 5 courses is a lot, especially on Zoom. Very good. And many of us have to work. Thank you for sharing. I honor you for sharing those struggles and those challenges you face. And remembering that, remember what I said before, your goals can shift. They're adaptable. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing right now in the chat, that's okay. Put it down on a piece of paper and think about it. Because how you set your goals from this point forward, I hope, will be less stringent, less harsh on yourself, okay? The reality, right? Your academic success has multiple pathways. And that's the point of this, right? Because you have values and because they are aligned to your goals, and those goals often reflect the expectations you have of yourself and of others, my goal in doing this is for you to open yourself a little bit, right? College, this first semester for many of you at Millersville, is a space and an opportunity for you to start seeing the possibility of how to attain your goals as you simultaneously reimagine, color in, redefine, and clarify your academic goals. At the same time, being very proactive about what happens if I hit a snag. What happens if I quote unquote fail? And I'll get to that word fail in a minute. What happens if I am not sure what my resources are? Okay? Get real about your goals. Number one, they only seem non-negotiable. So I like to think about when you set your goals, especially based on what you value, they are like a hazy grouping of colors way, 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 way far down the line, right? You can see it. You might be able to make out like, okay, that's blue, that's a little bit pink, that's a little bit red. And you're walking towards that thing. What a lot of us, especially young students and young college students and college students in general, they do is like, they go full steam ahead thinking that that blob of color is what it is supposed to be. It's just supposed to be a blob of color. No, your journey helps you create and redefine and put some boundaries and some shape and some dimension on that group of colors. So if you say, Dr. P, I have to get 4 A's this semester, I would ask you why. What do those 4 A's signify to you? I mean, because if you got 4 A's but didn't learn anything or didn't develop any skills, was it worth the stress? Maybe. Maybe not, depending on what you value. But if you say, Dr. P, my goal for this semester is in my 4 classes or 5 classes that I'm taking, I'm going to be engaged and I want to develop at least 1 new skill in each class. Then I'd say, oh, okay, you've left yourself open to the possibility that the skill you may think might not appear, but you might gain something else, right? You also give yourself permission to redefine the pathway of what that looks like for you, all right? Number 2, and this goes with that, a narrow path makes for a longer and often unnecessarily difficult journey, right? Your goals need to have boundaries, but they don't need to be straitjackets. I'm gonna say that again. Your goals need to have boundaries because you can't just have it all over the place, right? So you need a lane, as folks in my family. You need a lane. You need a lane, right, on a highway. But just because you are in a lane doesn't mean you can't take a detour, doesn't mean you can't shift lanes, doesn't mean you can't slow down or go faster, right? But if you create a narrow path for yourself, you are also going to create stress. And here's why. When you are in a narrow lane, so to speak, you don't give yourself perspective. You can't see, like just like a horse that has blinders on, you can't see what's around you. And when you can't see what's around you, you don't have the wisdom to make good decisions. And you don't allow yourself opportunity to move a little differently to achieve that goal. When you have a narrow view, this narrow view right here, you lack resourcefulness because you've constrained yourself to doing it one particular way, right? And when you don't have resourcefulness, you don't develop skills. Okay? From a student, I'm going to take a question. It's tough for me. How do I remain academically charged when my living conditions are not right for academic work? Good question. And I'm just going to take a little detour right here. I would ask a couple things. What is making the space not good? Is it noise? Is it just because you like to have different spaces for work versus play versus relaxation? Think about that. Like, why isn't it working? And if you have something that fits for you, and I can't tell you what you're supposed to have, that's up to you. If you're just like, Dr. P, it's not working. Then my next question is there an opportunity to shift the environment? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you shift the environment to go someplace else. Now, if that's an opportunity for you, an option for you to go someplace else, fine. Or could you shift the environment that you're in? Like, so you see me, I'm in my living room, I'm doing this webinar with you all. It's not necessarily ideal, but I'd rather be comfortable than go sit in my car, for example, right? So you have to do kind of like a cost benefit analysis. Could you put up a poster? Could you go outside? Could you sit in the lawn or on some grass and do that? Is there another space, especially if you're on campus, is there another space that might be better suited for you? And if the answers to all that is no, then we have to develop those coping skills, those resilience skills. And I'll get to those in a minute. So thank you for that question, right? So what do you do when the goal is, I want to do my best work, but I don't have the space to do that? And you've exhausted all the possibilities. I can't put up posters. I can't ask my roommates to be quiet. It's going to be noisy. There's too much noise, whatever the case may be. Then that's when you enact your resilience plan, because it's not going to last forever. And I'll get to that in a moment. So thank you for your question. All right. And then finally, about getting real about your goals. When you have a narrow focus, you think it's only about you, right? It becomes so like the world is over. It's just me. You don't allow people to support you when you create a narrow lane for yourself. And then finally, if you open your mind and open your goals to be a little bit more flexible, you get some clarity, right? That blob of color that's in the distance, as you move toward it, it gets clearer. And it gets clearer not because you're moving closer to it. It gets clearer because you can imagine what it could be, right? You can redefine it as you move closer. You can innovate. Oh, wow, if I mix those colors, red and blue, that's all the way in the distance, I get a purple thing instead of it just being two separate things. All right. If you're with me, give me a clap or something in the chat. All right. Excellent. Excellent. And my final slide. How do you develop a resilience plan? So we talked about goals, right? I spent a lot of time shedding light on how do you create goals. Number one, if you're taking notes, this is for you. Here's my summary. You ask yourself the question, why? Why am I doing this? Why do I want this thing? If you don't have an answer for that, then maybe we should reassess the goal to begin with. Once you have an answer to that, what are the expectations you have of yourself that are tied to your why? So for example, I became a professor because, that's my why, I wanted to help facilitate the growth of future teachers. I was a teacher, I loved being a teacher, and I thought, hey, I can really help other teachers. That's my why. What are my expectations of doing that? Well, that means, okay, I got to think about who I am as an educator, but also who I am as a person. The only way that I can do what I do is by being me. I have to be honest. I have to have integrity. I have to do things a little out of the box sometimes. Those are the expectations that I have of myself. But it's not just about my expectations. What do my colleagues expect of me? What does the university expect of me? And am I capable of aligning what I'm able to do and my values with what others expect? If the answer is yes, then we can set a goal. Here we go. Okay, my goal, as I mentioned before, is to interact with my advisees, most of whom are all future teachers, at least twice a week. How do I do that? I do that by texting, emailing, Zooming, checking in. Boop, I hit a snag in the first 10 days of the semester, y'all. I told you, being on Zoom I get headaches. Oh crap, that means I'm not gonna be able to touch base with my students the way that I want to. Herein comes my resilience plan. Number one, I need to know my goal. Okay, I know my goal and keep them flexible. Okay, Nakeiha, Dr. P. All right, I wanna reach my students twice a week, but this Zoom thing is giving me headaches. How can I do this? Move toward my goal with maybe in mind. Maybe I could do this. Okay, you say, no, Dr. P, do you want to give your personal cell phone number to all of your advisees? No. Well, could you give them to some? Yes. All right. So if I split my group in half, and the ones that I've known the longest and I know require a little bit more of my time and attention, if I give them my cell phone with some parameters, would that work? Yes, it will work. Here's my resilience plan. I'm adapting. Resilience is just your ability to adapt and bounce back. 3, address, not avoid setbacks or failure. So I could have persisted in my goal and just keep getting headaches and keep feeling drained and keep feeling tired, but then I'm not my best self, right? I'm presenting something that doesn't align with my value, which is to be honest and have integrity. So if I'm interacting with one of my advisees and I'm stressed, I'm not meeting my goal. So in order to address that thing, I have to pivot. Okay, take time to feel the losses. In my example, yeah, I wish I could meet with you on Zoom. I wish I could, talk to you 5 times a week, but I have to be good for myself in order to be good for you. And I got to feel that, like, oh, I know my student really wants me and I have to say no today because I was on Zoom for 6 hours. And if I get back on Zoom, I'm going to catch a headache. I got to feel that loss and not just pretend it doesn't affect me, okay? Proactively seek resources before. So if I had known, and I wouldn't have known, that being on Zoom so long would create headaches for me, I might have addressed this before, but that's okay. What resources are at my disposal? I asked some of my colleagues, well, look, how are you guys talking with your students? How are you engaging with them in class? Sometimes before can't happen, but if you can think about it ahead of time, that helps you when you reach an obstacle. That helps you develop some resilience. And then finally, and this is probably the 2nd or 3rd time I've said it, giving yourself the gift of perspective. Okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? And not to be fatalistic or depressive, but seriously. So for some of you, you might say, oh God, Dr. P, I'm gonna get a C in this math class because I really don't do math and I surely don't do online learning. Okay, have you felt that loss yet? Have you sat with that? And some of us get really entrenched in the anxiety of a thing. What's gonna happen? Well, walk it through. And if you can't walk it through safely, meaning not going to either extreme of your emotions, walk it through with someone like me, like your advisor. Because I often ask my students, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you get a C in this math class that you're not even in a major of? And even if you are in a major, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Or worse yet, what happens if you fail a class? What, you might have to retake it? Is that bad? Depending on your situation, it could be. All right, Dr. P, I'm going to have to take this class over and I can't afford it. Well, do you realize that there are resources for that? Oh, I didn't know. Oftentimes, when we don't give ourselves the gift of perspective, we imagine things that haven't even happened yet, and we let that determine how we move toward our goal, or we allow those unknowns to make us take away our own goals. Oh, I can't do that, so I'm not even going to try, right? Give yourself the gift of perspective. And so I'm going to wrap up just so I can give some time for some more questions. Number one, I'm going to go through this real quick. Your goals are often reflections of your values, because your values give you what to expect, how you interact with the world, how do you perform, and why, right? So when you create your academic goals, they're not just coming out of nowhere. They come from someplace, whether they're from you internal, like being internal, or from parents, or from your community, or from society. I must do this thing because, well, why? Sit with that for a moment, especially in this semester, especially if you're a first-year student, because you may be putting unnecessary stress on yourself for something you don't even believe in, right? And then once you figure out what do I value and how can I translate that into an academic goal, it doesn't always have to be about grades. I'm going to show up every day for my class on time. That's easy. If that's what you got, that's what you got. I am going to ask for help when I need it before it gets too late. That's how you set yourself up for academic success, not being reactionary, but proactive, right? And then once you have your goals in place based on what is of value to you, you should also have a resilience plan, because life happens. You wake up with a headache. Your boo decides to be a prick that day or that morning, and it just throws you off. How are you going to address life? Resilience plans exist because life happens. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. A resilience plan doesn't necessarily mean something negative happened. It could be something great happens. You got an unexpected A, and now you're so happy that you want to go party, but you realize, oh, wait a second, I can't. How do you shift? How do you pivot? How do you adapt? How do you bounce back? Your goals will be flexible. You'll seek resources. You'll not try to pretend that things don't affect you and that, oh, I'm fine. Be honest with yourself, okay? And you'll give yourself perspective. And if you can't give yourself perspective, give yourself the gift of people around you who can. And I volunteer. I don't know half of y'all. I don't even know who you all are. But I know that there are many people in academic advising, faculty members who are here to help you process through this journey that you're on, particularly in the season that we're in. So make sure your goals align with the things you actually believe, and that when you set those goals, they reflect clear and capable expectations for yourself. Have conversations with people that you may need to, like, I can't do that. As I tell my students, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to give a reason, no. Now, when you're in class and the professor asks you to do something, that's not an option, okay? Just so we're clear, I said it. And then when you face an obstacle or an unexpected blessing or a failure, right? Learn from them and adapt and or pivot. And so that's my time. That's what I gotta say. Thank you. I'm gonna stop my share. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Primus Smith. This is Dr. Godino. Folks, if you have questions, feel free and put them over in the chat for Dr. Primus. Wow, what an amazing talk. I learned so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Primus, seeing no questions, I have one. I think you raised such a good point about surrounding yourself with others who can give perspective. how do you know that they're giving you the best or the right perspective, or how should you weigh their perspective? Because everybody comes at things from a different way. How should we do that?
Very good. Thank you for that, Dr. Godino. That's part of the reason I start with the self. And I know many of us are still trying to figure out who am I? And that's a big question. But if you're clear about what is important to you and have allowed your goals to be flexible, when people give you their perspective or suggestions or advice, it will feel more like a possibility rather than a must, right? And for me, when I when I check in with my accountability folks, whether they're professional or personal, there's often a synergy that happens when I hear something that I've already ran through within myself. And that's how I weigh whether or not what they're telling me is aligned with the things that I value, or if it's a little off. Like, because a lot of times people give perspective and give advice based on what they would do and not necessarily on what you would do. And that's just normal. But if you've taken the time to really assess what you value and what goals you have for yourself, whether professionally, academically, or personally, when people give you perspective, there won't be a heaviness that comes with it when those things align. Oftentimes, especially, I know many of you all are dealing with, parents and family, and there's a authority dynamic that's in that. But part of this growing process that you are in as a college student is figuring out what you want. And it may mean having difficult conversations like, listen, you told me this. I was thinking about this before. How could this look? What do you think about this? And asking those types of questions instead of just taking everything at face value.
Thank you so much.
I see a couple of questions in the chat. So what is an example of a good resilience plan? I don't like qualifiers like that. Good, Savannah, not to diminish what you're saying, but I think I get the gist of what you're saying. You need your resilience plan, right? It needs to work for you. And I think there are some hallmarks to resilience plans in general. Number one, like I said, they start with your goals and your values, right? So if you are attuned to the things that make sense to you and your whole self, then your resilience plan will benefit you. A resilience plan, if I gave you mine, it may not benefit you because you do things differently. How do you deal with stress should be on that. And it needs to be positive and productive. Everybody has their own thing. For me, I really like watching bad TV. So when I face a obstacle or a challenge, sometimes I watch 30 minutes of Real Housewives of New York. That's what I do. It helps me get out of my head. It helps me not think. It helps me decompress, and it helps me de-stress, right? So my resilience plan has a couple of those kinds of things in it. And then another thing that my resilience plan has in it is an opportunity to reflect when I'm ready to reflect. Oftentimes people want to just deal with things right then in the moment, and that sometimes is not healthy, right? So let's say you get a paper back and it doesn't look the way you want it to, or you got a grade that it didn't match your effort, for example. Oftentimes I see students want to immediately, check in with the professor, immediately say, well, what happened? Pause for a minute. Part of your own resilience plan is to process whatever obstacle or challenge or quote unquote failure that is in front of you. If you haven't done that, when you go out and try to gain perspective, you're emoting instead of thinking, right? You haven't grappled with the issue yourself yet, and then you're putting on someone else to help you deal with something that you yourself haven't dealt with yet. So number one, is there something to help you de-stress? Two, is there a process moment? What are you doing to process your experience and reflect on your experience? And then three, opportunities to come back to it and think about, okay, do I need to adjust my goal and check in? So for example, if I have a goal that I want to check in with my students twice a week, I have to ask myself, is this working? Before it's not working, right? And that was part of my problem for the first 10 days. It was working until I got a migraine. I hadn't allowed myself an opportunity to check in and say, is this working? So I think for me, my resilience plan has at least those three things in it. Does it align with me? right? Or do I have a holistic approach, right? To de-stress, to process, and to check in to see if it's effective and efficient. And I guess the fourth component would be, so that I'm not isolated, who knows about the path that I'm on, and how are they holding me accountable and or checking in with me? How do you, how do I close my learning gap? How do I challenge myself? Why are learning goals important for students? How do I create career goals as an undecided student? Okay, I'm gonna start with the last one. Career goals. I tell my students this all the time. A career you can have some insight about now, but I'm more concerned about the skills that you're developing. Because if you're in the skill development mode, it doesn't matter what career you go into. Most industries, whether it's medicine or finance or education or whatever, there are certain skills that are universal: critical thinking skills, communication skills, interpersonal skills, collaboration skills, right? And so if you say, Dr. P, I'm an undecided student, meaning you don't have a major, that's okay. What are you doing to figure out what you like and what you don't like? There is no time other than right now in your college education that you have an opportunity to explore and experiment, right? And I tell my students this all the time. I am far, far, far away from undergrad. But one of the things that I love, is one of the best pieces of advice I got, was take the classes you would never take ever. And just see, even if you have the most remote interest, you're like, but Dr. P, I don't have money for that. I can't do that. Find something that will satisfy a gen ed that you wouldn't normally take. I'm not telling you to be stupid. I'm telling you to experiment. I'm telling you to use this opportunity to figure out what you like and what you don't like, because that will lead you to your career. And if you already have a clue about what you like so for me, I went to college and I liked English and language arts and different things. And so I declared my major early, but that didn't stop me from taking classes in anthropology. I didn't know what anthropology was and if I was ever going to use it, but it was one of the few classes that I took that I didn't do well in, number one, but I learned so much because I remained open. The other thing is, if you have an opportunity, once COVID allows the outside to open, think about experiences beyond this campus if you're able to. And don't say, oh, I can't, I don't have enough money. We have resources for that, right? Go study someplace else if possible. Open yourself to building some skills, building your experiential knowledge base, so that when you start to refine that picture, that goal of a career, it will become clearer to you. How will you know if you like working with people if you don't work with people? How will you know if you like working with children if you don't work with children? How will you know if you like working or writing for the newspaper if you don't try it? How will you know if you can sing if you don't try it? This is an opportunity to do that. And many of those opportunities will align with, I need credit for this, I need credit for that. Fine, we'll figure it out. Do that. And as far as career goals, what do you want out of your life? And so my thing is, what do you want to do? And keep in mind, a career for your generation is not necessarily something that's going to last you for your entire adult life. Be open to the fact that you might have multiple careers by the time you graduate and get to, 65 years old. That's okay. All right. Next question, why are learning goals important for students? Well, why are you here? Why do you want to come to college? Because there's a lot of ways to get educated. You can go to a vocational school, you could work, you could volunteer, you could go do a mission trip. So having learning goals here at Millersville will help you stay focused on what you intend to get out of the experience, right? Just being present in the school is not going to it's not going to happen by osmosis, right? And so when you establish learning goals, you are making yourself accountable to why you're here, right? And for some of you, that's very clear because mom or dad or whomever is like, you need to make sure you're spending my money correctly and doing something useful, right? But for more so for yourself, what do you hope to get out of it? And your goals will help you make that clearer for yourself. in terms of how do I challenge myself? I like I said, take stuff you wouldn't normally take. Like many of you have come out of high schools where you were the #1 student or very close to it, and you kind of stayed your path. You stayed in your lane. College is an opportunity to kind of widen that path a little bit. And I would say if only, like many of you have at least, I don't know, 9 to 12 elective credits that you can take something in. I see too many students taking those elective credits and doing stuff that they would have done anyway. That's fine, but try something different. How do you challenge yourself? I'm not good at science. Then take a science class. Take one and I'm not saying take the hardest one, just take one. And then it will allow you to put your resilience plan in action. So, because here's the thing, I don't believe in failure. I believe in lessons that make us like go, oh, okay, that was cool, right? So for me, my stretching of myself in undergrad happened 2 times. When I had to take those 2 math classes that I did not want to take because I was done with math after high school, and when I studied abroad. I studied abroad in my senior year of college. And before I left, I asked my mom, I think this is too late. Like, why am I going abroad and it's my final year of college? She's like, what are you going to lose? And that was the best question I could ask myself, because it was the most important experience of my life to date. It created in me a desire to travel. I met people that I never would have met otherwise. I learned about myself in ways that I didn't realize. And so when you step out of yourself and your comfort zone just a little bit, just your baby toe, just step out just a little bit, you open yourself to developing skills and perspectives that will benefit you, not just in that moment, but 15, 20 years down the line, right? And so, for example, I studied abroad my senior year of college. Now I teach a class on comparative education. I've since traveled to 7, 8 different countries. If I hadn't done that, I don't know if that would be the case. Michaela, I'm already falling behind in the course. I feel myself falling back into old habits of avoidance on pace. Okay, you've named it. And thank you. And I honor you for sharing that personal experience with us and with me. If you know you're avoiding, lean into that discomfort. You've already done the first thing. You've named it and you said it out loud, right? So now the next step would be is, who are you avoiding and what are you avoiding? If you need to have a conversation with your professor, send an email. Hey, Dr. Such and such and so-and-so, I know I've been avoiding you, but I need help. That's all you need to do, because you've already put it out there. And then you go from there. And what I tell students all the time, don't stop if the level of response does not meet your need, right? So if the professor or whomever is not really matching what you need, here's where you get to practice some advocacy skills and your resourcefulness. We have academic success coaches. We have the Academic Advising Center. They say the loudest ones get the most attention. Start being loud, right? Help, 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 right? We don't yell fire like fire, fire. Like nobody's listening if somebody's like fire. When there's a fire, we were screaming at the top of our lungs. Now, I'll say this. Persistence does not mean being a pest either. You have to give people time to respond to you. You have to give people grace to respond to you, but be persistent. Now that you know that you've been avoiding, try something different, because you already know what's going to happen if you continue to avoid. You're going to go down in the same cycle, right? It's going to not be the way that you need it to be. Send a note to the professor, or meet with them during office hours, or sign up and say, just show up. Hey, Michaela, I'm Michaela Warner, and I'm having an issue. Can you please help me? Allow yourself the gift of perspective, because you won't know what's possible if you stay internal. You mentioned failure to please. Define failure, please find. So for me, failure in the world, in our society, means you didn't get it right. Means you didn't meet the mark. For me, failure just means you just now have a new opportunity to meet the mark. It's the difference between an optimist and a pessimist. Like, yes, that sucked. I had an aim to do X. let's use the A. I wanted to get an A in math, and I failed. I got a C minus. There's possibility in that if we reframe our thinking, right? We use a growth mindset, right? You say, okay, I got a C. Was my goal realistic to begin with? And you gotta be honest with yourself, right? If you know math is not your thing, why do you have the aim to get an A? And even if it's not your thing, did you set yourself up to get an A? Did you go to office hours? Did you get the tutor? Did you do your homework consistently at the same time every day? Did you put forth did your effort and your skill match? Because oftentimes I hear students say, well, I put so much time into this. I always ask the question, what was the quality of that time? Did you just have the book open? Were you staring at the pages? Were you engaging with the material? Did you give yourself, and I'm keep saying it, did you give yourself the gift of perspective, even through like other students, the professor, a TA, something like that? What was the quality of that effort? Just because you opened the book and you read it doesn't mean that your skills are automatically gonna go with it. And that's why I say goal setting is a personal endeavor where you have to be really, really clear about where you are. That doesn't mean you can't grow. That doesn't mean you can't emerge. It just means you need to know your starting point and what your capacity is. And so for me, when I fail at something or quote unquote fail, I feel like it's a lesson. Like, okay, I got to reset. Where in this process do I need to redefine some things? Is it my capacity? Did I have enough resources? Did I try to do this by myself when I probably needed to involve some other people? And if all those things were checked, yes, I did all that, and I still didn't meet the mark, then I have to look outside. Well, what other things are possible about this? Did I misread? Did I misinterpret? You still need to go ask and seek some resources. Dr. Randolph, I hope that helped.
Thank you so much, Dr. Primus. This has been so wonderful. We could stay with you for days, I think, here and hear your continued wisdom. But the reality is that our hour is more than up, and I know that folks need to get on to different places.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Primus Smith, for the gifts of your time and your wisdom. And just these tremendous things that you said that, you know, it not only applies to students, it applies to us just about life in general. And you're an amazing counselor, and we are so fortunate to have you among us today. Maybe I'm wondering, do you want to give a contact in case any students want to reach out to you in some way?
Sure, I'm putting my contact information in the chat. Feel free to snatch it. You could also just type my name into the Millersville search engine. I will also, just in case anybody wants, what I will do, like I said, my sincerest thoughts are there in terms of I can't promise anything, but I'm gonna put my office hours link in the chat as well. So if you want to just chat offline, everybody gets 30 minutes. You just sign yourself up. All right. I'm available for that. And if I can't help in some way, I pride myself on being resourceful. We'll find somebody to help you.
Thank you so much. I just want to remind everyone that we do have more in this speaker series coming up. It will always be advertised in the MVille Daily. And I'd ask Dr. Mabinyo, is there anything else that we should say before signing off for today? I think you're muted, Dr. Mabinyo. I think you're still muted, Margaret.
My apologies for that. I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Primus, for such a powerful presentation. So powerful. And I'm sure the students that were in attendance, even faculty and staff, benefited from hearing such wonderful words of wisdom. And as Dr. Godino has said, the series will be occurring every other Wednesday. We have lined up powerful speakers for you, and we completely encourage you to look out for the announcements in Ville Daily and also in the events calendar. We are so grateful that you came, and we are looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much.